the man who is the director of investigations and research for one of the most important entities in the swamp, fighting the swamp. It is, of course, Judicial Watch. Chris Farrell, welcome back to America First One-on-One.
Great to be with you, Seb. Thanks very much.
So we have the luxury of a little bit longer here, and we need to discuss this issue because as far as I'm concerned, and I said this yesterday, this now makes Watergate irrelevant. Watergate is just a small comma in the history of American politics. This is a gargantuan scandal if this is demonstrated in a court of law. For those who haven't heard you before on our show, some new listeners, we've got new stations, would you be so kind as to give a brief bio, what you did in the U.S. Army and your specific intel background, Chris?
So I was commissioned as an Army intelligence officer many, many moons ago.
In the good old days of the Cold War.
I missed the Cold War.
It was much simpler.
My life was a lot simpler. So I was commissioned as a military intelligence officer. My specialty was counterintelligence. I spent a lot of time doing counterespionage work.
Let's stop there for a second.
Sure.
For those who aren't in the know, the difference between intel and CI.
Sure.
CI, you're catching or misinforming the bad guys, right?
So counterintelligence, the effort is to identify those foreign intelligence services, those hostile forces or powers, trying to spy on the United States and detect them and then in some way disrupt them. And there's a few different ways of disrupting them. But you're trying to protect the United States, protect our secrets, protect our forces. And so in doing that, you can do counterespionage investigations. You can try to find the bad guys and bring them to trial. You can stop them also by just letting them know, we know what you're doing. You can shut them down that way.
Light them up.
Ideally, the holy grail, and I'm very fortunate to have actually done this, is to run an intelligence operation back against them so that they think that they have something that they don't.
Give them bad goods.
Or to actually recruit a foreign intelligence officer. And you can approach them and say, hey, look, everything we've given you for the last 2-3 years has been under our control and authority. We can make you a star in your own service. Or maybe that person has a particular need. Maybe they've got a sick kid, or maybe they're compromised in some other way and they need a way out, and we can provide that to them. There's kind of it's a cynical joke, but that person may have all the character defects and personality disorders you're looking for. And so we may be able to help them in some way. So anyway, it is what Eric Ambler called a wilderness of mirrors, right? It's they think that we know that they think that we know kind of stuff. But
the double, triple.
Yeah. So you need a scorecard and a compass to kind of get your way through this. But it's a fascinating thing to do. And
how many years did you do that?
A little over 10. And so, and I'm not blowing my own horn. I was quite good at it. And I also went on then to become trained as a clandestine human intelligence case officer. So I went on to what's colloquially referred to as the farm and was cross-trained. It's essentially the same tradecraft and techniques, but adapted or turned in a different way. So instead of countering espionage, you're actually conducting or running espionage.
Running agents, assets. Right. All right, well, that gives us all the credentials we need, and that's why we're so glad you're at Judicial Watch doing this work. So let me just ask you, your raw reaction to the Friday indictment that the White House was being spied upon by lawyers and cyber experts hired by the Hillary campaign, Chris.
Yeah, this is astounding stuff. This is really stop the press's, 40 font, bold headline kind of stuff. It truly is. Now, of course, they released it on a Friday before Super Bowl weekend kind of a thing, so they've done everything they could to bury it. They might as well release it on the Friday before, some other holiday, which also leads me to wonder what the hell Durham's doing. He's operating at a glacial pace, right?
Well, this is my natural question. So let's go straight to that, because I've had conflicting reports. Some people said to me, a former, U.S. attorney for D.C., that no, this is good. This is good. This is how you reel in the small guys, and then you get them to flip. You don't hurry. You build the case from the bottom up. And then many others, myself included, who said, really? I mean, sorry, what year is it now? Who's the president? Who did you charge? Some minor FBI lawyer who forged a CIA document to say the opposite of what it said, and he got, 80 hours of community service or something? So,
and Kleinsmith is fully reinstated.
Fully reinstated.
As a member of the D.C. Bar,
yes,
in good standing. So he's a model for all of us as far as ethics and, just a shining human being.
So we're not inside the investigation. We don't know what Durham knows.
Correct.
But from the outside, and as a former national security professional, where does the jury stand right now on this whole investigation?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be wrong, but I'm very cynical about it because if President Trump had been reelected and was currently in office, we would be on his 5th or 6th impeachment by now, right? Yeah. So the system, when it's a conservative or when it's somebody who's not part of the establishment, when they're the target, they move like lightning. Yeah. When it's the left and it's the big, sort of statist Leviathan, and the Clintons and everything associated with them are great examples of that, then it's a glacial pace. And that's what Durham's been operating under, a glacial pace. And so, and even this, which is stunning look, even this document that's come out is really, it's an interesting way to tell the story, because this filing has to do with trying to get around an apparent conflict of interest.
Right. It's not being arrested for conspiracy. It's you might have a conflict of interest filing.
Correct. and down in paragraph 10 or whatever it is, they go, oh, by the way, these people were up to this, and that's why we're concerned about it. Right. So it's this very, arm's length, third hand, oh, by the way, sort of way to dump out truly explosive material. And, only people looking for it are going to find it. So there's other ways of doing business, and if they wanted to really be hard-hitting, they would be, but they're kind of soft-pedaling it.
Is there any significance, do you think, to the fact that for at least the last, couple of months at least, Comey, Brennan, and Hillary have been unusually quiet?
Yeah, I used to encourage them to talk and keep talking, because, it only got worse. And some of the stuff Comey would say, was just crazy, just gibberish. I mean, nuts. Brennan the same way. Brennan would I would wonder if he was, off his meds or something. I mean, just crazy language. So the fact that they've all gotten quiet, maybe they're worried. Maybe, people have come out of grand jury proceedings, or people have been interviewed and kind of after the fact whispered and said, hey, look, they're on to X, Y, or Z. And so they shut up. Dick Cheney famously said, you never get in trouble for what you don't say. Yeah. And maybe that might be the lesson here.
Yeah. We're talking to the Director of Investigations and Research at the superlative Judicial Watch. Follow them on Twitter at Judicial Watch. Please, please support them. It is money very, very well spent. And more than 90% of their funders are donors like you. Not the big, rich foundations, but Americans who want to fight corruption. That's judicialwatch.org. It's a perennial question for me. And you said it before. You said the Brennans, the Comeys sometimes say really kind of wacky, weird stuff.
Right.
And I'm constantly, I like Occam's razor. And having worked in government in the DOD and the White House, it is a true sea of mediocrity. I mean, the swamp is, you are promoted for mediocrity, truly. So when I look at these guys, when I look at this administration, the Jake Sullivans and what, I don't see smart people. Now, you're an individual who had to get the measure of enemy actors. You had to get the measure of the enemy intelligence service. You had to get the measure of your liaison services, the targets you were trying to reel in. I don't see any big brains. I see arrogance by the dumpster load, but I don't see real sophisticated big thinkers. I don't see even the Jesus Ankletons. I don't see the Dullases of the 50s and 60s. Am I missing something? I mean, they don't seem like top-tier operators.
No, look, very often, a lot of these sort of careerists in federal government, and that's what they are really, as careerists. Yeah. They're also opportunists.
Yes.
Yes. And so they'll hop on the bandwagon, or they'll elbow their way. They're very good at throwing elbows and having sharp elbows to position themselves to maximize opportunity, but they're really not very deep thinkers. And there's a lot of fear-based decision-making, There's a lot of very petty and very selfish, and it is an unhealthy mindset. It is really, they're very good at guarding their turf or their rice bowl, and they'll protect what they think is important. And a lot of stuff is driven by petty, personal, vindictive kind of stuff. I mean, one of the things that I think this is interesting is that, you look at someone like General Flynn, and, Flynn was loathed, hated by the FBI, by people like McCabe, in part because there was an FBI agent who had a grievance. The FBI agent had known Flynn and had worked with him indirectly on some sort of a task force. The FBI agent had filed the paperwork, had blamed McCabe for some sort of unfair labor practice, and then had called General Flynn as a witness. And I don't know whether Flynn gave a statement or he appeared at a hearing. I forget the details.
I don't know this story.
Yeah, I forget the details of it. But the agent had said, hey, look, I'm a good agent. I've done the right thing, and I've made tough choices, and I've had good service, and blah, blah, blah. McCabe was on the other side of the equation saying, oh, no, don't promote him, don't give him the job, don't whatever. So there's some sort of a grievance thing going on. The agent had turned to General Flynn and said, General Flynn, you know me, and you know I'm a good person. And Flynn had come in and basically affirmed the agent's claim. And I forget the details, so don't hold me to it.
Okay.
I know it occurred, but the grudge match and the hatred from the McCabe crowd against General Flynn, runs deep because there's this little bureaucratic face-off and you oppose to me. And
therefore I hate you.
Right, forever, right? And so these sorts of petty rivalries run deep. And there's examples of this all over the government.
And there's moral turpitude in truckloads, but I don't see, a Kissingerian figure that is the Grand Master. I don't see strategic thought. Let's say it like that.
No. It's much more. They're like petty mobsters. They're really. Right. You know what I mean? You're trying to come into my neighborhood. Right. I mean, that's kind of the way they operate.
Right.
No one is remarkable. Like you said, it's a sea of mediocrity.
Let's listen to one of them. This is my friend Chris Plant calls him Penitentiary Face Brennan. This is one of the probably most outrageous things anybody has said in politics in the last century in America. Play cut.
I don't expect Mr. Putin to acknowledge it. He's going to deny. But for the President of the United States to continue to prevaricate on this issue, I think does a great injustice and a disservice to the men and women of the intelligence law enforcement community, and does a great disservice to the citizens of the United States. And that's why I said it was nothing short of treasonous.
Now, the damage done to our national security, from potential walk-ins to liaison services who now don't trust the then president because the former CIA director says he's a traitor, is probably not measurable. It's so large. But can we identify from the outside, because we have Crossfire Hurricane, which is the first ever tri-agency intelligence operation against a political campaign.
Right.
Where's the, as Clausewitz would put it, where's the center of gravity for that? Because you've got, the Azra Turks of the world, quote unquote FBI agents trying to honey trap George Papadopoulos in a London pub. You've got the NSA involved. You've got the CIA, the FBI. Is it Brennan? Is it Comey obeying Brennan? Where do you see, is it Rice telling them all what to do? Given your observations of the last 5 years, where do you think this all begins?
Yeah, it's the Oval Office of the Obama White House. I mean, they literally sat there together and had conversations about this. And we're not making this up. We have a couple of different White House, Comey as well, under oath describing a White House meeting in January about how they all got together and discussed what they were going to do to screw Trump. I mean,
and how to use the Logan Act against Mike Flynn.
Right. I mean, this is a deliberate. I mean, here's the other thing. You have a memo from Lisa Page specifically stating the president wants to know everything we're doing.
Yeah.
She's preparing talking points for Comey to go over to the White House. Her boyfriend, Strzok, is, hey, what are you up to? What's going on? She's all bubbly, giddy. She's working on these talking points to brief Comey, to go over to the White House, tell her what's going on. And she specifically says the president wants to know everything we're doing. Yeah. There you go.
And not only that, we have the retroactively post-dated email from January 20th.
We did nothing wrong.
Yeah, as Donald Trump has already been sworn in, and Susan Rice is still somehow in the White House writing an email reminding everybody, oh, that conversation we had 2 weeks ago, I'm just going to remind you what I said back then, which President Obama wants everything done by the book. There's a phrase from William Shakespeare for that. It's called, "The lady doth protest too much." You don't write emails reminding people, wink, wink, I told you to do everything by the book, don't you remember? So yes, it goes back to the White House. Where is the exact genesis of it? Who knows? In the meantime, I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First, one-on-one with Chris Farrell, head of investigations and research for the Judicial Watch organization. Please support them, judicialwatch.org. Chris, when I entered the White House for about 2 weeks, I didn't use the phrase deep state. I thought, little bit, edgy, little bit fringe. Then I saw it. Then I saw the deep state at all the NSC meetings. Then I saw the SESs, the SISs, the permanent bureaucracy act as if there hadn't been an election. Literally, they did not care who the president was and whether 64 million Americans voted for him. And then I found out what they're doing to us. The FBI, I was told after I tried to sequester some people to the White House, I was told after 6 months, you will not get those personnel because the 7th floor of the Hoover building looks at this administration as, quote, the enemy. So at that point, you know the deep state is real. Given what you do every single day at Judicial Watch, you, Tom, the whole amazing team, I don't want to provide a false narrative about corruption in D.C. because, yes, the Democrats, with this indictment and everything else, are undermining the fabric of the republic. But this isn't just about Democrats, is it? I mean, if you look at the GOP machine, there's enough corruption there as well.
There sure as hell is. I mean, let me tell you, nobody's got a monopoly on ethics in D.C. And in Washington, D.C. is the only place in the world where the expression ethics waiver makes sense. And both parties use that, and they both operate that way. And if you look at the machine, and it really is machine politics, right? There's a lot of stuff, a very famous, I won't reveal who it is just because at this point it's moot, it doesn't really matter. But there was somebody discussing Tom DeLay as speaker. And they said, well, of course he's a crook, but he's our crook. Yeah. You know, I can't stand that kind of crap. I mean, that is infuriating to me. And so that's the mentality. You know, it's like two 10-year-olds fighting over the Xbox controls. You know what I mean? They both want their turn to control the game, and now it's my turn, and they're going to do the same lousy, rotten stuff that the other one did. That's what gets us in trouble. And
that's why Trump was a problem, right, for both sides.
Exactly. He didn't care. Right. He wasn't going to play all their stupid little games. He wasn't interested. Not only was he not interested, he didn't even know what they were. So, complete outsider, very different experience,
didn't kiss the ring with the GOP establishment.
Right. He just finished destroying 16 Republican munchkins, right, to get past the primary. Right. So these people get up on stage with him. He destroyed them one after another. He goes in. He wins the election. The anointed one, Hillary, is kicked to the curb. And here's this guy who's broken every rule, all the conventions. He is the great disruptor. And he's going to come in, and he's going to do what he wants to do. And the system, capital T, capital S, and I don't care where you fall in it. You could be Republican, Democrat. The system cannot stand that. Right. And they will do everything they can to try to destroy him. And that's what we saw.
I'm biased because I was inside the building, but let me ask you on the record. Isn't it surprising, given what you just said, that he achieved as much as he did in those 4 years?
It's stunning. It is stunning that he achieved what he did. There was a page, I think it was like 49 pages long as a PDF of all the various accomplishments he had, big and small. And there's some things that I think the left would like you to believe are counterintuitive, that he had major accomplishments in the area of, for example, women's empowerment, economic empowerment. His daughter Ivanka led a lot of this stuff, and there's things about Ivanka that are great and things that are not so great. But I mean, you have to give him credit where credit's due. Women, peace, and security, a huge part of the Defense Security Cooperation Agency and their work overseas. Surprise, surprise, if you've got a developing world, we used to call it third world, we can't say that anymore, developing world country where women are involved and actually have a say and can vote and can, have some involvement in society, guess what? It's a more stable society. When they're treated like cattle, guess what? It's a less stable society. So, I mean, he had advancements, huge, and people would never, Trump?
Oh, the misogynist.
How would Trump be pro-woman? Guess what? He was. He did more than many did.
Your podcast is Chris Farrell's On Watch?
That is correct, sir.
All right.
And you can go to any of the usual platforms and find it.
All right. Chris Farrell's On Watch is the podcast. Subscribe today. You're listening to America First One-on-One. I'm using actual primary sources because I am with a former counterintelligence officer. He's the head of research and investigation, so I think it is apt. This is the most recent National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin from just 9 days ago from the Department of Homeland Security. I'm just going to read the opening 2 sentences to our guest, Chris. The United States remains in a heightened threat environment fueled by several factors, including an online environment filled with false or misleading narratives and conspiracy theories and other forms of, and this is that new acronym, it's DC, you got to have acronyms, MDM, mis, dis, and malinformation, introduced and or amplified by foreign and domestic threat actors. These threat actors seek to exacerbate societal friction, to sow discord and undermine public trust in government institutions, to encourage unrest, which could potentially inspire acts of violence. I would guess, Chris Farrell, that you would agree with that assessment, at least when it comes to the mainstream media and a certain political party.
This bulletin is, it's trite to say things are Orwellian, but the problem is no one, and I ask people this all the time, very few people have actually read 1984. Yeah. It's been eliminated from curricula in schools. This is newspeak. Not only do they create a new acronym, a new term, mis, dis, and malinformation, MDM, and they have a link to it and they describe it all. This is an attempt to scare people from thinking. We've gone beyond scare people from speaking. You are now being cautioned and frightened not to think certain things.
Yeah, the wrong think.
That is correct. And I'll tell you that if you look down, if you check that bulletin again, look at factor number 1 in their threats.
Let me read it. Factor number 1 is the proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. I thought about 20 years ago, weren't we told that dissent is the highest form of patriotism,
that is
Chris?
Correct. See, but now, if you don't believe and trust in all government institutions, that's threat factor number 1.
And you are an MDM criminal.
That is correct.
I'm glad we laugh at this because, the thing that came to me as I was prepping for my Newsmax show, 1984, I get it, but this is worse than 1984 because in 1984, it was a whole system. If Winston Smith did not comply, didn't memory hole that unpleasant truth about history, he goes to the torture chamber with Big Brother. What we have today is we have the government saying this is wrong think, and then we have free actors in the political sphere, like the Democrat Party, or in social media, at CNN, at Facebook, who don't have a gun put to their head by a GRU officer.
Right.
They're actually on board. They're doing it willingly. So isn't this worse than 1984?
In a sense it is, because there's always these sort of useful idiots or these willing conspirators or whatever term you want to use for them. But they are actively, aggressively promoting this kind of thing. And so it's bad enough that we have a government agency generating this kind of garbage and putting it out as a bulletin, and these are the factors, and this is... If you raise questions about the veracity or the accuracy of election results, not using the F word, not saying fraud, but just saying that there were irregularities, that is an offense.
Or COVID, if you're Joe Rogan.
Specifically in that bulletin, if you ask questions about COVID and about where it came from or about different treatment protocols, That's an offense, according to them. And so you can't even discuss it anymore. It's verboten.
Which means the January 6th
Kangaroo court.
The 700 arrests. This isn't just some whim of Nancy Pelosi's. This is now the executive making sure that they have a weaponized thought crime index under which to measure you.
Correct. And you will recall that we have sued, Judicial Watch has sued to obtain all the video from January 6th. And it's the official position of Nancy Pelosi and her Capitol Police Force, also referred to as the Staatsschutz, right, the state security arm, that three things. Number one, those videos are not public records. Number two, there is no public interest in viewing those videos. And number three, they've claimed sovereign immunity, that they will not subject themselves to being sued in a court of law over this.
Which is applying to the police officers as well, isn't it?
It is, because it's actually the Capitol Police or the defendants in this case.
Right.
And so, but it's an astounding position for a police force to take, that they are sovereignly immune from even being sued or called in a court on this issue.
Right.
And the notion that, okay, we will simultaneously hold these things in our head, two different things as being true. Number one, we have to have a January 6th kangaroo court to run around and accuse people and try to get them jailed and all these other crazy behaviors that they're involved in. And they want to control the narrative of what happened on January 6th. But then simultaneously, if we ask to see all the video, release everything, get it all out, let everybody look at it, good, bad, and different, see it all. From people smashing windows to people kind of wandering around looking at paintings and statues.
Yeah.
Whatever happened, release it. No, you can't see it. So, I mean, which one?
So what's the possible scenario? Do you guys have to take that all the way to the Supreme Court?
That is one possible, route that it would go. Obviously, we don't agree with them. We will fight them in court and exercise every legal right we have, because we do think, number one, they're public records. Number two, there is enormous public interest, good enough for them to have their little kangaroo commission. And number three, the American public are owed responsiveness. They must be accountable to the public. They must. They're not above.
Well, I mean, if a police force isn't accountable to the public, it is a police state at that point.
Right.
And the question, the naive, the obvious question that has to be asked is, why else are the cameras there?
Correct.
Are they there to blackmail members of Congress and staffers if they're
they are now
seen doing the wrong thing?
Well, they're also now recording and documenting who's visiting which congressman when.
Yeah.
And one particular congressman in Texas, Congressman Neal, had his office entered into, searched, photographed, etc. My advice to all congressmen is to go get little nanny cams, those little hidden video recorders, and put them in various spots.
See what the state police, the police state is doing inside your
Correct.
offices. We're talking to the Director of Research and Investigations at Judicial Watch, Chris Farrell. I have used on numerous occasions, I can't tell you how many times, Chris, a line you shared with me the last time we did this, and we were talking about specifically things hadn't gotten as bad as they are right now, and we were talking about the corruption of the DOJ and the FBI specifically for about an hour. And I said at the end, so what do we do about it? Can it be salvaged? And I consider myself to be adequately cynical or living in the real world. And your response kind of gut punched me. And I said, this is from a guy who is not a rabble-rouser, not hyperbolic, knows his stuff. And you said, can't be saved, dismantle it, send in the marshals, and rebuild it.
Correct.
That still stands, I presume.
It does.
What do we do with the rest of it? Because if we look at everything from Lois Lerner at the IRS to the Capitol Police Force not releasing tens of thousands of hours of footage, can any elected president, can any Congress do what needs to be done to the hive of corruption that is DC?
Yeah. I mean,
what would it look like?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Here's some quick ideas. Obviously, stick with disbanding the FBI. That's absolutely essential. And we can talk about that later if you want. Point two, all attorneys within the Department of Justice have to be treated like commissioned officers in the Department of Defense. And every 3 years, they have to rotate. They've got to move. They don't necessarily have to move geographically, although that would be a good thing, but they certainly have to get out of the jobs that they're in. So there's no concentration of power and authority.
There's no fiefdoms.
Correct. And you've had some DOJ attorneys who've sat in their particular little division and, been there for 20 years. That's crazy. I don't want them there. I want them moved around. And if they don't want to do it, there's exciting new possibilities for them in the outside world. Have at it. There's all kinds of things you can go do.
Right.
Their attorneys, they can hang out a shingle and do whatever they want to do. They're not going to starve. It's endless employment for them. The other thing I would do is I would do what the Federal Republic of Germany did post-World War II, and that is take all of the various departments and agencies of the federal government and split them up. Move them all over the country.
So this is my first piece of advice to President Trump, that all of these departments, just move them out of D.C.
Correct.
Department of Education, if you can't get rid of it, put it in, Waukesha. Just get it out of here. Put
Correct.
it in South Dakota.
Yep, exactly correct. And so divide and break up the federal government geographically.
Because my logic here is only people who really want to work in the South Dakota Department of Agriculture will work there.
Correct.
It won't be people who are trying to create little mini empires in D.C.
That is correct.
Okay.
They can have liaison offices here where they meet for whatever reason.
Right.
Look, the whole world went into Zoom, Skype
right.
mode, whatever.
Right.
So great, go do that.
Okay.
And so, Ag goes to South Dakota. Justice Department goes to Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Pick. I mean, it doesn't make a difference.
Right.
There should be some place where they can get in and out of.
And you'd think congressmen would like that because it goes to their district.
Exactly
right.
Right. Yeah. So the German
Jobs, funding.
Yep. In Germany, the Bundesgeneralanwalt, which was the German federal prosecutor's office, was down in Karlsruhe, Germany. And so, eventually it all went back to Berlin once they unified, but and so they just split the government up because they did not want a concentration of power, right? So even Bonn as the capital back in the old days was kind of a mistake, but that's fine. But we should do the same thing and just move these government agencies and departments away from each other.
That's an obvious one that I think, President Trump could do. What about the EIC? What about the intelligence community? Is it salvageable? What do we do there? I mean, I love Mike Pompeo, but he was captured by the CIA.
Yeah, it's that is a tough nut to crack. In part because they're often their own worst enemies. I still have friends within that world, and the amount of time they spend doing stupid stuff is
and stuff that doesn't serve national security.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not value added.
And they also do a lot of tail chasing, and so every new issue or problem, they want to create some new task force or strike team or
interagency task force.
Yeah, and it's just it's exhausting. And a very good friend of mine, he's a very sharp guy. It's kind of funny because he started out many moons ago as kind of like a worker bee, but he stuck with it and has really done tremendous work. He always yells at these meetings and says, "Stop it! Why? Let's just do what it says we're supposed to do, right? Let's stop creating new this and that.
Right.
And
do the job on the paper.
Yeah, we already have all the authority we need. All the laws are there. All the regulations. Let's just do what we're actually supposed to do and stop running in circles." And so he's counted on to always throw cold water on the latest crazed initiative.
All right. So. Any other ideas in terms of changing culture at these entities? I like you're introducing this military concept of rotations, officer review panels. What is that? Well, how else can we change it?
Yeah, and
OERs.
Yeah, those sorts of things actually already exist. It'd be nice if they actually did them. And it kind of goes back to my friend's comment.
Right.
Something else I would do is just tell everyone right off the bat, you got a 10% reduction.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you think you're doing, so that nobody thinks it's severe and it's crazy and it's excessive. Everybody can take a 10% reduction in whatever it is your budget is you think you need to do. And if you say, well, we can't because we can't sacrifice program X, okay, don't sacrifice it. But I bet you somewhere down, you're ordering too many paper towels, whatever it is. You can find 10% and just slice it out of the budget right off the top.
Last question to those who love America, have served America like you do, believe in America, and after the events of 2020 have lost faith?
Have I lost faith?
No, what do you say to those who have?
To those who have lost faith. It's way too of a fatalistic outlook on things, right? Never pick a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And all these problems are temporary.
That's good.
And time marches on. God's got a plan, and I'll tell you, I can cut to the chase. He wins, right? Despite all the turmoil, despite all the upset, despite the efforts of dark forces to do horrible things, the victory's already been won. And we just need to cooperate with that and keep the faith.
It's a great message. In the meantime, while we wait for our share of that eternal victory, please support Chris and his colleagues. It's judicialwatch.org. They really are fighting the corruption in this benighted city.